Hi, I'm Paul. This is my second shot at a podcast. Hopefully, I'll get better as time goes by. For some reason, it seems harder to do a podcast than it was ever when I was in front of a jury giving a closing argument. This episode we'll call it episode 2 of This Old Man Sitting on a Front Porch, and it's in addition to my first podcast relating to Veterans Day. I'm deeply concerned with the current administration sending and threatening to send United States troops into cities, towns, and villages. This concern is really twofold. First, the legality of having federal and National Guard troops on U.S. soil. Second, the effect this has on the soldiers who are sent in and the citizens of these places they're sent to. To do so, I think it's necessary for civilians who've never served to understand what it means to be a soldier, sailor, airman, or woman, or a Marine. From the lowest rank to the highest, excluding elected or appointed officials, whether they ever served or not, a person on active or reserve duty deserves our respect, not our derision. What I say here is not meant to be a complete description of what it's like or what it means to be in the military service. As with most things, from our employment or profession to our family life, physical and mental condition, you can't possibly know what it's like to be a soldier unless you walk in that person's shoes. I could talk about cancer until the proverbial cows come home, but unless you have it or have had it and walked in my shoes, you'll never fully understand it, no matter how much I try and explain it. In 1980, the Army came out with the advertising slogan of "Be all that you can be." The Air Force had a catchy tune I seem to recall was something like "The blue of the sky and a pretty girl's eyes," probably a bit sexist. The Navy had its "Not Just a Job," and the Marines had "The Few and the Proud." I want to address the super controversial use of the military by the current administration in American cities. I want to talk to the military and about the military, not ICE. That I'll leave for a later time. ICE agents are not, as far as I'm concerned, police and not the military. Actually, although a legitimate government agency, or so they say, they have, at least to my mind, taken on the connotation of mercenaries. I want to talk to young people and older generations who have not served in the armed forces. Also vets, to remind them of who they are and how proud they should be for their service. To do this, I'll use my own experiences, which may or may not mirror others. Remember, these are my shoes, not yours. Shakespeare, in his play Henry V, used the famous Band of Brothers speech. Yes, we are. But now it should rightfully be Band of Brothers and Sisters, although there's an unreasonable attempt to take away rather than expand my sister's rights to serve alongside my brothers in every capacity, including combat. As I said in my initial podcast, I was born an Army brat at Walter Reed Hospital during World War II, just before my father was assigned to the European theater of war. As an Army brat, I quickly learned that I was different than my young civilian friends. At a very young age, like around third grade, I began to see that the military is a society in and of itself. Take a tour of any military base, and you'll see that it's like any city, town, or village. It has police, fire department, grocery stores, etc. It's usually totally self-sustaining. As a child, I knew that brats were different than other kids in my public schools, elementary through high school. When I lived on post, my school bus was Army green, not yellow. My bus driver was a soldier, and we always had a military police officer riding along. I don't know as to keep us quiet or what, but anyway, I had many civilian friends, but still didn't quite fit in. I and my other brat friends knew that we were different, and that tended to set us apart. We were proud of our parents and our situation. We often woke up to reveille blaring out of loudspeakers and stood with our parents in the evening when our flag was lowered for the day to the mournful bugle call of retreat. I enlisted in the Army at the ripe old age of 18, right out of high school. At that time, the voting and drinking age was 21. It now seems strange that I could fight and die for my country, but I could not vote, which makes voting so much more precious to me. To understand the soldier who the administration is intent on unlawfully sending into our towns and cities, you need to understand that he is not to be scorned, or, as was done when we came back from Vietnam, spit upon. If you believe that ICE agents are doing the right thing in their treatment of people, that is your right. And if you want to protest their use of force and the entire immigration policy, that's also your right. This is not the military. When a person goes into the armed forces, he and she begin by going through a process called basic training, which begins even before you step off the bus at your training center. When I went in, it was to the yells and shouts of the basic training cadre, which included a lot of profanity, which I understand since I was in has been tempered over the years. You quickly learned not to volunteer when you were asked if there were any truck drivers, because you'd be given a wheelbarrow and a shovel to dig ditches. The goals, as I understand them, and still do, was to train the individual into becoming, as the saying goes, a lean, mean fighting machine. To do this, you had to break down the person physically and mentally, and then build that person back up into a totally different individual. One who is not just a trained killer, but also self-sufficient. You learn quickly that you never question an order, as your life may depend on it. And likewise, you always obey an order for exactly the same reason. It must also be understood that, as with any society, there's more than just the basic training. The individual goes on to train in advanced infantry, armor, and advanced specializations, which include everything from cooks to quartermasters. This holds true whether you're in the regular service or reservists or in the National Guard. Unlike a civilian job or profession, you are instructed in all areas of living, from personal care to how to make a bed. For me personally, it was a month of school in military intelligence, followed by almost James Bond types of overseas assignments, and finally ending my active service with a company supporting the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. That was prior to that division being sent to Vietnam. I was in Vietnam much before anything took place. So you should be in a town or city where the National Guard has been sent. Trust me, chances are that the man or woman does not want to be there. Perhaps they join the service out of a sense of duty, without having to go far from their house and their family, and only spending a minimal amount of time in uniform during their enlistment. They also may have joined for the benefits, or to live in a sub-society where you are not judged and that you matter as an individual. Of course, there may have been, or is, a consequence to those who found themselves called to be in a war zone from Korea to Afghanistan. This holds true for those who've been or may be sent to American cities and towns and villages. With rare exception, I don't think they want to be there any more than you want them there. So please, do not treat them as anything other than your neighbor who were ordered to do something that many, if not most, would rather not do. I mean, who wants to leave their job and their family? And again, I emphasize, I'm not talking about ICE. I do not know what their requirements are, and I don't know what the training is that they may have, except in general terms. I'm talking about our armed forces. If you don't like it, don't take it out on the serviceman. Take it out on those in power by making your voice heard through the electoral process and peacefully voicing your opinions. And I emphasize peacefully voicing your opinions. At the age of 82, I'm so proud to have been in the service of our country. I just wish that the people who had our government at this time, and especially those in the Department of Defense, acknowledge the sacrifices of our men and women in the armed forces and not destroy that which is not broken. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And place our men and women in a position of possibly following an order which may harm our citizens. I point to the Kent State University shooting and the deaths of 4 students May 4th, 1970. We are already seeing people killed by ICE agents. I will leave the ramifications of those shootings up to the courts. Basically, putting our service personnel in a situation which may lead to violence against people who are not a foreign enemy is plain and simply wrong and totally stupid. Imagine what it would be like to go home to your family and know that you took a life because you were placed in a position not of your making. Being a Vietnam vet in a country where almost everyone wanted to kill me is bad enough. Take pride in the fact that you have men and women who are willing to voluntarily put themselves in harm's way by entering the select band of brothers and sisters to protect you and this nation from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. But domestic does not mean innocent men and women and children who live in our free country, no matter how they got here. I never thought I'd face a time where I'd be ashamed and sickened by the actions of our government leaders. If you disagree or have a different opinion, feel free to express it in an intelligent and reasonable manner by hitting the dislike and or making a comment. However, I would appreciate a like, and if you want to continue to hear me spout off, click subscribe. That's it for now, and I will talk to you in episode 3.